Have you ever just sat down and started doing something, not fully expecting to get invested, and then suddenly 3 or 4 hours passed? Welcome to Final Fantasy, the first one to be precise. During an online game session involving a Garfield role-playing game, and no, I will not elaborate further, keep tuned to the channel for Eldritch Mondays, is I think what we're calling it. Since things were a bit slower during character creation and we were all online with our computers, I decided to do something in the background. Anything that was too taxing on the brain wasn't a good idea, so instead I decided to play Final Fantasy's Pixel Remaster and start my journey from there. I'd played the first game a few times prior, but not typically to completion. On the Wii Virtual Console, God, I miss those days. Listen to the soundtrack. Anyway, on the Wii Virtual Console, I had grabbed the NES version of the original Final Fantasy. I had played it before, usually stopping around the Earth Cave, either from lack of grinding or general confusion. The game has a pretty set up path up until you break away to go deal with the dwarves and open the path to the greater world. So I'd get lost, put it down, start over months later, rinse and repeat. Fast forward to now, and with numerous ports of the original release and remasters or remakes to boot, I decided this was the perfect background game. Well, I beat it.
Note to self, please beat Final Fantasy I's Pixel Remaster in order to have proof of said claim.
Disregarding my notes that are calling me out like the jerk they are.
Hey! It's not my fault you're writing this script before you finish the Earth Cave.
Disregarding my notes calling me out like the jerk they are, I was not anticipating making this detour, but it's all I can think about at this moment in time. Proof is, right there. I beat the game. I 100%ed it, in fact. The music, the pixel art, the sense of adventure, even just the simple act of fighting, grinding, getting to the next story beat, learning new spells, all of it is an addictive loop of self-satisfaction that's all led by you as the player. I mean, in the original, the game started you with nothing. Not any armor, weapons, items, or spells. You had 500 gil to your name, gil being the currency in Final Fantasy, to purchase the bare minimum necessities. You could decide to wander a little off the path and get assailed by goblins or wolves that are a massive threat when you can't defend yourself. But that's the magic of it all. The game allows you to make these poor decisions The town was just ahead of you. But it's not a problem in the Pixel Remaster. You do start with at least a weapon per character to defend yourself from the minor encounters you'll experience outside the initial town of Cornelia. Turning the game on, you're greeted with a wonderful rendition of the main theme, playing in most every entry in Final Fantasy. That wonderful string of chords resonates very deeply, mysterious yet calming, haunting yet exciting. Adventure awaits, and pressing start and new game has you faced with a very important choice. 4 young adventurers have traveled to the kingdom of Cornelia, each of them holding a dormant colored crystal. It has been prophesied that 4 warriors of light shall emerge when the world is at its darkest, a telling called Lucan's prophecy. You must decide who each of these warriors are. You have 6 classes. Warriors who are able to wear all types of armor, wield all types of weapons, and utilize their strength. Monks who are a mix of fast and strong, able to wield some armor and some weapons. They have a mix of speed and strength and that can deliver some strong blows. Thief is the fastest of the classes, using light weapons and light armor to go first in almost any scenario. White Mage is your typical healer, able to make some decent hits and heal it back up or cure the party of ailments like poison or blindness. Black Mages are pure power and wield devastating black magic that throws fire, ice, and lightning at foes on top of dealing status elements like sleep. And finally, there are Red Mages that can wield weapons like the melee classes and use white and black magic interchangeably, the jack of all trades yet master of none. So my party was decided by my group in said session of Garfield Eldritch nonsense. I have Micah the Monk, Lilith the White Mage, Jerome the Red Mage, and there's Kyle. He's the Black Mage! On a side tangent, I absolutely love the designs of the magic users in Final Fantasy. Each of them are iconic looking, and in particular, the Black Mage has stuck with the franchise since day one, even being used in modern Final Fantasy. But now I have my crew. I walked into town and gathered supplies and fought Garland, who stole away Princess Sarah. I spent about half an hour grinding fights, watching time tick down, and keeping my head half in and half out. And then it clicked. The music is stellar, and I was interested in seeing what I could manage to pull off without a guide. The Pixel Remaster version, I bought mine on Steam, has 27 achievements, and I noticed it was along the lines of completing the bestiary, opening all the treasures, beating the main plot, finding all locations, leveling to 50 with each character, and a few odds and ends. My completion brain kicked in and I was hooked. I even, as I stated earlier, beat the entire game at 100%, only doing a little extra grinding to find some of the more unique parts of the achievement list. I beat Garland, and the king opened the bridge to the north, allowing me access to the wider world. The famous screen and familiar tune of Solace and Adventure colored the screen. Welcome to Final Fantasy. Square was the company at the time, and after years of mild sales figures, they were not a company expected to survive much longer. In a last-ditch effort, they created an NES RPG for Eastern and Western markets called Fighting Fantasy. But that caused some issues with copyright, so they picked a different F word, one that, though it was quite a fitting name, was just a means to an end. The name Final Fantasy was their final attempt to create the fantasy and hold on to that dream of creation in a corporate and competitive market. Now, despite being called Final Fantasy, there are numerous entries, and this series is nowhere near final. In fact, amidst the layoffs of 2023 and the gaming market as a whole, Square Enix has cut away most of their properties, aiming for a select few IPs. Final Fantasy is among them, to lead the way in this unforgiving market. Final Fantasy XVI pulled in some hype for sure, but sales figures are a scary reality among this growing industry. In the end, corporations aim to make money, but we can always appreciate the light and creativity that shines in even the darker moments. The art, music, gameplay, and design comes from talented individuals and teams that should be commended for all their hard work back then and now. And now an ad break! Have you heard of the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, whose free trial goes up to level 70, including the award-winning Stormblood expansion? What are you waiting for? Final Fantasy I's gameplay is fairly simple. Once you've selected all of your characters, you wander the overworld, towns, and dungeons to scour for treasures, monsters, and ultimately, your plot MacGuffin for the moment. The game never deviates from its simplicity, adding flavor text to fuel the spark of adventure, but whereas modern games are far more deeper more often, the initial game in the 80s was basic. Very basic. Early in the game, you meet the Elf Prince, who slumbered for 5 years under a curse. The Dark Elf King, Astos, attempts to trick players and stole away a magical crystal eye, which in combination with a magical crown hidden in the Marsh Cave, would allow him to become King of the Elves. Defeating Astos grants you that crystal eye, which can be turned to Matoya, up north near the initial starting point. Granting her the eye gets you a potion to cure the Elf Prince, and a rude gesture that you're not as attractive as you could be, which, same buds, same. Free the prince from his spell, get thanked, and receive a mystical magical key that allows you to enter special locked doors in dungeons previously. That's an entire arc in Final Fantasy I. Now, despite its limitations, there are still some fun twists in the development as you go along. I'll leave it off as a spoiler since the entire Pixel Remaster collection is available on Switch, PlayStation, and Steam, and I would buy it again on Xbox to get those achievements. Do not tempt me. But the starting look of your characters is not the end look. You will become far more powerful. There's time travel involved to defeat the root of all problems, and really it's kind of an unhinged concept, even if in reality it's excessively one-dimensional. The ultimate goal will be to travel the world, find a way to save the 4 different crystals of the elements, and stop the ultimate bad guy, Chaos. Chaos. Funny part about Chaos. Back in 2022, Square Enix partnered up with Koei Tecmo to release Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which detailed Jack Garland and his initial quest to stop Chaos. It's a crazy, roundabout, and wacky adventure. Tons of action combat, monster fighting, and it does show some of the original world in a new light, giving a background story to the original bad guy Garland, a knight in the employ of Cornelia. I adore Stranger of Paradise immensely, even close to my Game of the Year in 2022. It's ridiculous and adds some crazy history to a game that didn't have a lot there to begin with. I do intend to cover this gem in the near future as well. For Chaos! Combat in Final Fantasy I is turn-based. Everyone has a speed stat subtracted by the weight of their main armor. Once all the actions have been selected, it determines who goes when. It can seem random at points, but wearing little armor usually means you go first, though random number generation does take its toll. You can attack, cast magic, defend, use an item, or flee. Characters can do one attack or multiple depending on their skill with a weapon or lack thereof. A monk with no weapon does 6 attacks with their fist on average, and it's a devastating amount of damage. Honestly, bosses melted with my monk. A true glass cannon if there ever was one. I think it might even be funny to just play 4 monks and just no weapons to melt bosses, but they might have some issues with enemies like green slimes, as an example, which reduce physical damage and take increased magical damage. A balanced team is a good idea, but I'm sure with simplicity on this game's side, it'd be easy to set up a challenge run and go. Final Fantasy I is not very long, clocking in at about 15 hours to beat the main plot, and about 20 hours to 100% at post-game, which was unlocking all the treasures and getting the bestiary complete. I had tons of fun reliving this classic, even further than I ever had, and the quality of life changes were really cool. Now we're entering a bit into the unscripted part of this video where, in all honesty, I really did not intend to play this. I started it up again during our RPG time with a few friends of mine that we do off stream, and it was in the background. I was playing it, and it clicked. And over the course of like a week and a half, played a ton of it, and it ended up beating it. And true to my word, I did it all without a guide. There was only one part where, like, again, when the map kind of opens up post dwarf cave, at that point, it's like, I have this boat, I don't know where to go, but in being a little diligent, and there's on the Pixel Remaster, you have like a few extra options, like increasing the experience tremendously, or increasing the gil you get, and which I didn't use either of those options, but I did about like 3 or 4 times used the turning counters off, especially when I got lost, which, you know, I'm sure is a quality of life feature that would make you go, well, I did it initially in the original Final Fantasy, and, you know, it is what it is. But you could just, like, I played on a controller, you can click on the right stick and it turn off encounters, and it's a godsend. I can even see it being helpful, like if you run out of health near the end of a cave, and you could just run out if you run out of healing items. But I didn't use that more than like once, where I was in the middle of a thing that like, did a lot of damage, and I wasn't prepared, so I turned it off rather than risking a game over, because that's just more annoying at that point. Like, I know I'm gonna die, so I might as well be a good noodle and go get more prepared. So I enjoyed this a lot. Again, the art was great, the music was phenomenal, the little story it was telling is very much more Dungeons and Dragons and less Final Fantasy. It's not even any of the staples. It really is very basic. And I guess playing the other ones, I guess for context's sake, now having beat Final Fantasy 1 in its Pixel Remaster state, I've played 3 but never beat it. I've beaten 4. I've played 7 Remake and beat that. Have not played Rebirth. I've beaten 10, 10-2, 12, 15, which I 100%ed and loved. And I started 16. So I'm very enamored with Final Fantasy, but I don't have as much of its game catalog under my pedigree as some others might. And I obviously have played the MMO, hence the little dumb bit earlier, but which I've played 14. I actually did play 11 too on the 360, which was a bad idea, but all in all, this was a phenomenal little side venture. It was really quick, very homey, and kind of cured a little bit of the sadness that was kind of creeping in throughout the week. So, thanks, Final Fantasy. I look forward to playing your other ones. 2 is next? 2. I wasn't big into Final Fantasy as a kid. I didn't play 7, which was the big one for years. My favorite one to date is Final Fantasy 15, and I adored the boy band adventure full of sad emo vibes and a 3-hour turtle fight. 7 Remake was a ton of fun, and I look forward to actually getting into 16. Again, I love the MMO 14, as does my wife, who plays it often. My first one was 3 on the DS. I was legally blind as a kid until I was 19, when I had my vision adjusted and new lenses sewn in. But even with those limitations, the opening movie sends chills down my spine. I love that soundtrack, even if the game falls apart in the second half. One thing about this franchise of JRPGs is that there is likely a game and a setting for you. Be it action or turn-based, fantasy or sci-fi, every numbered entry is just a little bit different. I am curious, what is your favorite Final Fantasy game? Sound off wherever you do, and I'll see you next time as we adore more and more about video games.